And she said, and people told me, you got to talk to Earl, because she'd been going in and out. The reason they wanted her to talk to me is because of the shared experience, that I understood how she felt having had the same experience. And it's hard to find somebody who survived the plane crash. We're around, but we're pretty rare. She looked at me and she said, can I make it? And I looked her right in the eyes and I said, yes, you can. And I'm living proof of it. And that's when I knew that that promise that I didn't want in that book was real. That the past had suddenly had tremendous value.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. From Studio A, deep in the heart of Texas, that was the voice of Mr. Earl H that you heard at the beginning of this episode here, episode number 234, that is. And you will be hearing so much more from Earl H in uno momento, but first things first. This episode is being brought to you by Dave and Barb and Laura and Anonymous and Joshua and Audrey and Jason and Mary Lynn. Do you know what Dave and Barb and Laura and Anonymous, their name's not actually anonymous, they just don't want to be recognized, you get it, and Joshua and Audrey and Jason and Mary Lynn did? Well, they went to our website, soberspeak.com. They clicked on the little yellow donate tab and they made a contribution. So thank you so much, Dave and Barb and Laura and Anonymous and Joshua and Audrey and Jason and Mary Lynn. This episode is coming right out to youans. I, John M., will be the chairperson for this meeting between meetings, and I am truly honored and privileged to serve all of you listening in. So take a seat, if you will, around this virtual table, and let's get started. First, before I get into the episode itself with Earl H here, I want to go ahead and read an email that I received this week. And, this is part of listener feedback, I guess is what you can call it, but we're putting it on the front end. Lauren writes in and she says, hello from CT, Connecticut. She says, hi, John. It's nice to finally be able to write this email. I have listened to almost every single one of your podcasts while I was incarcerated from September to January, and I love them all. Your guests are amazing, and they help me get through every single day sitting there waiting for somebody to decide that I can go into the real world again. They decided on January 28th to put me into CVH's Merit Hall program. That's here in Connecticut. And I successfully completed that. And I am now living in a sober house in the town of Norwich, Connecticut. It's nice to be able to interact with people again on a level that is not behind a locked door. Due to the COVID virus, we were on a 23-hour-a-day lockdown and stuck with the same person in the same room for pretty much the whole time I was there. So when I say that this podcast got me through, I mean that with all my heart! Exclamation point. Please tell your guests that I am so appreciative of them. And with the help of this podcast and my family, I am now sitting here with more than 6 months clean. On the 20th, it'll be 7 months. I hope everyone is well, and I thank you for taking the time to listen to me babble. It's not babbling, Lauren. Have a great day, and thank you so much for everything in big capital letters and all these exclamation points. With regards, Lauren M. from Connecticut, big smiley face. Lauren M., I just got to tell you, that took me aback when I read that, and I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful that you were able to listen to the podcast while you were incarcerated, and God bless you. I am so happy that you were on the right path, and congratulations on your almost 6 months, and thank you so much again for writing in. All right, everybody, now on to our featured speaker. Earl H is a voice that many of you are going to recognize right off the bat. For others of you, I know this will be your first exposure to Mr. Earl H. And Earl lives in Vista, California with his wife, Lori, and Earl has been sober since November 6th of 1980. We discuss Earl's life and times as a noted circuit speaker. I'm always curious about that, and I was able to ask a lot of questions. We talk about the events that took place in Earl's life on his 22nd birthday, including the plane crash that tragically took the lives of his family. We talk about Earl's recovery journey from that plane crash and the moment where he realized that experience, the plane crash that is, could provide tremendous value to others. Keep in mind, this is the beginning of Earl's journey, and we're going to be putting out some additional episodes with Earl in the near future. It may even be next week, but I just want to see if I can get all that together. We're going to have plenty of follow-up conversations with him. But like I said, we really just kind of get through the first part of his journey on this particular episode, and we'll follow up with more later. So, everybody, please buckle up, enjoy the ride, and without further ado, I present to you Mr. Earl H. Enjoy. Oh, last thing, we will have plenty listener feedback at the end of this episode. Enjoy. Okay, everybody, so today we are sitting here with an interview I've been very excited about, the one and only Mr. Earl H. So, Earl, will you please go ahead, introduce yourself, give your sobriety date if you wish, and tell people where you live in this land of ours, please.
Sure. My name is Earl. My sobriety date is November 6th, 1980. I live in Vista, California with my lovely wife, Lori. We've been together for 24 years. I don't think she'd appreciate the vagueness of that, but we've been together a long time and happily so.
That's great. And you used to live in Arizona, am I right about that?
I was born and raised in L.A. I'm an L.A. boy. Always will be. That's home to me. That's where that's where I did my running and gunning. That's where I got sober. That's where my original recovery took place. That's where Lori and I met. We got married, and she had family in Arizona, and wanted to get to know her nieces better and whatnot. And I had the kind of business, and still do, where moving was cool. So I just said, let's go. I've always been a bit of a vagabond that way. I mean, I'm not real attached to stuff, so I can get up and go is easy for me. And we went to Arizona. Actually, we went to Arizona, and I discovered that I loved the desert. It's a mystical place. we were there for over 6 years. But when she said, I'm done with the desert, you want to go back to California? Man, I couldn't get packed fast enough. I realized that I'm not the vagabond I thought I was. I'm very affected by my surroundings. And when I got back to California, and we bought a great house down here, and I opened up the front door and the back door, and ocean breezes just rolled through my house.
Wow.
And the impact that that's had on me is dramatic. So I am very affected by.
Talk about that impact. What do you mean? Like,
I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the ions in the air from the water. I mean, I don't even know if what I said is real. I just that there's something about being near the ocean that settles me.
You just feel more relaxed, more settled.
I do. And it may be just familiarity, and it may, whatever it is, it's positive. And I roll it. So we're really we've been back 3 months, and
just 3 months.
We're still putting, our house together. We're still, moving in, and really happy to be here. The two of us I got 2 German Shepherds, Rocco and Lila, and the 4 of us are having a blast down here, man. It's good.
And so I want to talk real quickly about you. As you know, we were, trying to get some technical stuff straight, having some conversations and stuff like that, kind of getting set up here. And we finally did. And then when we got on camera with each other, as you know, we're publishing audio, but not video.
Right.
But you wanted to you had some not warning.
I didn't really even notice, you with the way I looked.
Right.
I'd had a little cancer run in, and had just undergone a 2-week chemo series of 2 treatments a day for 14 days, and had pretty much burned my face off, and it's just been peeling, and I'm another 2 weeks into the healing. So I've been about a month into the process, and I still, I've got, I'm still pretty torn up looking, but.
So you said this happened, this is like a long kind of drawn out.
I was first diagnosed with malignant melanoma before I got sober. I mean, it was over 42 years ago. And 1978, 1979, somewhere in there, and had major surgery on my upper back, and did all the stuff that they do. They told me to get my affairs in order back then, and I was still using. And I remember thinking, "What affairs?" I haven't done anything with my life. I remember being really struck by that. And I was, unbeknownst to me, I was, very close to, the life-changing experience of getting sober. So, I go every 6 months to get checked. And this last time I went, they just said, things don't look good. We need to, really take a good run at this. And I said, okay. So they did, and I'll be fine. Wow. Anybody who's thinking, how, our people are, Earl's going to be dead within 30 days. And what I mean? No, I'm great. I'm fine. I did what needed to be done, and I'll be just fine.
You said I laugh at cancer or something like that. What'd you say?
Well, it was like, it gets so serious, you know what I mean? It's just like, come on, you know what I mean? It's like, I've had, tougher battles than this in my day, and so this is like, nah, it's not even going to slow me down. I mean, most people go in the house and sit in a dark room, wouldn't let anybody see them like this, I'm going on Zoom meetings in front of 1,000 people and speaking and, stuff. And then, people just are like, whoa, what happened to you? And I tell them to keep moving. I'm just not vain enough to worry about it that much. But I don't want to upset anyone, that they see me and they get concerned. So I just want
understand.
to alleviate any concern. It's
You're doing all right.
a bit of a trying time, but I'm fine.
Okay. Another thing we were talking about before we got cranked up here was, as you know, I live in Texas, and I loved. You said you've been here probably 75 times or whatever. Yeah. And so Earl, just so you know, we have people listening to the podcast. I mean, some people are tried and true AA. They've been around for 25, 30, 40 years or whatever the case may be. And others are like, they're just kind of, coming in, they're new. And so they may not know as much about conferences and, traveling and what people do, but you have been, I guess, what is affectionately known as a circuit speaker for many years.
Yeah,
do you still do?
I've been going on the road, speaking at conferences, all over the world. I've been all over the world for the last 30 plus years, speaking at conferences. Which is and conferences are basically areas will have once a year they've got their meetings and their home groups and their Alano clubs and all those things. And then every once in a while, like once a year, they'll get together and all the meetings they'll get together and they'll put an area event on for an entire area, like a state conference where, groups from all over the state will rent a hotel out and put out flyers, and they'll get flying speakers from all over the world. And they'll have a big, celebration of recovery. And you'd be surprised how many of those there are, anywhere from 250 people to 10,000 people, that go on. And then every 5 years, there is the international conference, which is put on. And that's, 50 to 60,000 people. It's huge. And I've spoken at that one and all the way down to, wherever two or more are gathered, what I'm saying? It's smaller is like when you're speaking to 10,000 people, you just look out at the room and you think, hi, everybody. It's a little overwhelming. And then you just find a guy down in the front row or sitting there looking at you, and you just go, I'll tell you, just talk to that guy. Because really all you're doing is talking to 10,000 people, one person at a time. I mean, it's what we do and what we share. If it's done as suggested in the book, it's from the heart. It's the language of the heart. And it's, from one person to another. It's the nature of our fellowship, our community, is that it's a very personal, unique thing.
So what has been your, people have had different experiences with this. Some get burned down on it, whatever the case may be. It's helped them in their spiritual journey. Some have found I was getting too big of an ego. I mean, it goes all over the map. What has been your, just general spiritual journey involved with the speaking at conferences? Has it helped? Has it hurt?
I've seen everything that you just mentioned. And I didn't, there have been 3 occasions where I stopped speaking. I didn't speak for a year, and then my sponsor directed me to go back to it. And another time I didn't speak for a year, and my sponsor directed me to go back to it. And then I didn't speak for 6.5 years. Not a word. I didn't speak at a conference. I didn't speak at a meeting. I didn't, nothing. I was quiet. I was a good foot soldier in the rooms. I sponsored a lot of guys. I was in meetings all the time, home group, commitments, all that. And if you think about it, the great majority of people in the recovering community stay sober without ever speaking at a conference or getting into all that, right? And have wonderful, full lives. And I just needed to put Earl H, let him go for a walk, and just be Earl for a while. And it was very healing for me. And people said, oh, you're going to miss it. You're going to miss, the adoration and all the, being so well known and blah, 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 blah. And not for a minute. I didn't miss it for a minute. When I was directed to go back, I did.
And so when you went back, what was that like?
It was fascinating because, I hadn't spoken in 6.5 years. And in a lot of meetings, about 90% of the people in those meetings had rolled in and out, so a tremendous number of people they went, oh, that's the guy from the CDs, because there's a ton of CDs of me out there. So they all knew that this, there was this guy, but they didn't know who he was or what he looked like or anything like that, because I wasn't at conferences and I wasn't, sharing at meetings and identifying my, So when I came back, it ramped up pretty fast. It was, oh, that guy, he's, he's back.
What about for you personally? Was it did you feel like, wow, I missed this? Or was it just, I'm carrying the message?
I just sort of felt like it's time for this now. It was just, this is the next indicated step. So I took it, that's all, and the door opened and I walked through it and, did what was asked of me. It wasn't, the good news about all that for me is that I've had great sponsorship, and I've understood from the beginning that all of this stuff has very little to do with me.
And when you were asked by your sponsor or sponsors, whoever it was, to go back and get in the game again, if you will, what was do you remember the rationale behind that?
Well, what my sponsor said, must be clear that he said this, not me. He said, you have a gift for this, and it was given to you, and you need to share it. And I said, okay. And if that's what you think, then that's what I'll do. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would disagree with you, but they don't sponsor me. You do. So I'll do what you say. And I always have. I've always been a very good sponsee, if you will, in that look, I'm a strong-willed, type A guy. And it's important for me to have someone in my life that I will defer to. So sponsorship has been extremely valuable and important in my life, that I'm not running the show.
Okay, I want to ask one more question on that, but first I want to do a real quick, what do we call this? Like a station identification. We will be continuing our conversation with Earl H in just a moment. Just a reminder, you are listening to Sober Speak. You can find us on the World Wide Web at soberspeak.com. You can also find the donate button on our website, which you can use if and only if the spirit moves you. Please keep in mind, this is a podcast funded by you, the listener. All right, so I want to ask this. You said your sponsor said you have a gift, which I believe. Right. And I know that, I have, oh gosh, I'm not looking at her name right now, but the reason I'm on the phone with you is because I had a lady write in, which I had gotten, and she said, hey, listen, if you, ever want to publish like Earl H's talk on your podcast, I think that'd be great. He has a great story and all that kind of stuff. And so I thought to myself, why don't I just ask him to be on the podcast? And then I reached out to Bill C, as you know.
Good man.
And I just asked, hey, do you have Earl's contact information? He gave it to me, and thus we are here. But here's the question I wanted to ask. What do you say to people? Because you know how everybody is with, I don't know, egos or whatever, but I'm sure people come up to you and they say, hey, Earl, I want to do what you do. I want to go get in front of 10,000
Sure.
people or 50,000 people or whatever it is and tell my story. But, you know, I think people just, there's certain gifts people have. And
Well, I've had you are correct. There a lot of people over the years have come up and said, I want to do what you do. I want to, speak a lot, and I want to do conferences and all that. And I say to all of those people, I say to them, well, you should know that you and I are completely different in that respect, is that I never wanted to do this. I was terrified of the podium. I never took a chip. I didn't take a cake till I was 2.5 years sober. And I didn't raise my hand and share in a meeting until I was 3.
wow.
Terrible anxiety around that. No, I mean, I was in a constant state of fear when I first started speaking. It's gotten much better, but I still get nervous. At first, it takes a couple of minutes for me to settle in and go, oh, they're not here to kill me. This isn't the place, where you hear the rifle crack. Everything's okay. These are your friends, right? It's difficult for me. I don't come to this easily. It's just the nature of my story. People found out about my story and went, wow, that's a pretty dramatic story. There's a message of hope in that, and you should be talking. And so it just took off, it was not my intention. I was just doing what I was told to do.
Okay, that's a good place to dovetail into your story.
Okay.
So let's talk.
I guess you want like the 10-minute version at this point, right?
Well, this is not the only session we're going to get to and record, I am sure. So let's just start. We'll see how far we get, and then we can schedule some additional time in the future.
Let me see how much I can streamline this without making it seem.
Well, I don't want
pointless.
You to streamline it. Yeah, no, you can. You're going to have plenty of time, right? Whether it's this session, the next session, whatever the case may be.
I'll just start at the beginning and
there you go.
Kick the can down the road, see what happens here.
I did hear you say once something to the effect of, I held off as long as I could to start drinking.
Well, that was, I started drinking when I was 12 years old, and I held off as long as I could. I had been restless, irritable, and discontented as a child. I come from a very violent home. I was always looking over my shoulder. I was always the tension level was always very high. It was, and I thought that's how the world was. I didn't know any different.
Okay, so let's dive in there a little further. So when you say a very violent household, can you?
My father was a very violent man.
Okay.
That's just all I would say about that and describe that is that he was very violent and was quick to it. Let's just say. And so, I mean, I grew up around having that right there. The risk of that was always there. When I was 12, I got sent off to boarding school. Which to me felt like I was being thrown away. That was my emotional reaction to that. I was being given an opportunity for a wonderful education, but that was not how it felt. It felt like I had been thrown away by the people who knew me best in the world, and I didn't know what I'd done to be cast out. So I pretty much cut off all communication with my family, and I never went home again. When there'd be breaks, every 7 weeks, kids would go home, for a weekend from boarding school. I'd go with other kids to their houses, go stay with them. And I just didn't want to, or I'd go home and just grab some clothes and go hang out with some friends and then, get a ride back. And I didn't want anything. And it was too painful for me to be around that. to be cast out and then just walk back in like nothing had happened. Because nobody was going to talk about it, not in my family. And I didn't know how to. So, it was just, no. And in turn, I became, because I grew up fighting. I mean, that's how I was in boarding school. I was the smallest and youngest kid in the school of 250 boys. And, people kind of let me be because, I was quick to the fists. I was quick to, to fight. Which is not something I'm proud of. That's all fear-based behavior. That was because I didn't have the skills that other people had, like how to talk to each other, say how they felt. I acted on it because that's all I'd ever seen. First week there, I got in a fight and the cool kids came around and said, "You want to smoke some weed?" And I said, "Yeah." And so began my storied career, a little weed, little red wine, and just that the magic happened. That thing that makes me bodily and mentally different from my fellows occurred. Suddenly I was comfortable standing where I was standing, doing what I was doing with the people I was doing it with. And I never felt like that before. It was like I'd exhaled fully and completely for the first time. I was okay. I felt like things might be okay. And I didn't know, is it the pot? Is it the wine? Is it these two guys I'm hanging out with that were clearly, close personal friends, having spent the last 15 minutes together, under these circumstances. And so it just started, 12, was a little weed, little wine, 13 was pills, got strung out on barbiturates and did all that stuff. And 14 was psychedelics, got classified legally insane by the military years later as a direct result of the absurd amount of psychedelics I did. Started shooting dope at 15.
How does that work in other words, it just affected your brain so much that when you were in the military?
Well, I'd been thrown in the nut house a couple of times. So there were, psychiatric records on me that suggested to the Army that I wouldn't be, a good opportunity, we don't think we can mold this fellow into what we would like him to be. We don't think that will go well with him. He will resist that and it will not be worth it. So you get away from us. So once again, I was ready to go. I was ready to, be in the Army. And they said, no. I said, well, okay then. And I hit the street and do what we do, on the street, and ended up, like I said, I'd gotten, I had become a drug dealer, only because I had no morals, I had no ethics, I had no sense of family, I had no sense of community. I was just loose, with this pain inside me, and I was trying to outpace my demons, and I wasn't doing a very good job of it, right? And starting to overdose, and things are going hinky. And I mean, I was clever enough to do well in school and get accepted to law schools all over the place, and all that stuff. But my disease was just accelerating at such a rate. And then I got diagnosed to have malignant cancer, and I went and dealt with that, and then went back to school. And my mother called me and crying and said, because we'd just been through this whole cancer thing and they'd almost lost me. And I guess my mother had just thought, this is ridiculous. We have to stop this fighting. We have to be a family. Life is short. We almost just lost him. We have to come together. So she called me crying and said, you and your father are going to put this crap aside, and we're going to come together as a family. We'll go anywhere you want to go, but we're going on your birthday. We're going as a family somewhere. And we're going to, and outwardly, I'm a child of the 60s. I'm a hippie. I got hair down on my elbows. I'm, a full blown alcoholic drug addict at this point. But my mother was crying, and, I had no defense against that. So I said, fine. So on my 22nd birthday, I flew back to LA, and we took off to fly to Guadalajara. I said, let's go to Guadalajara, hang out for a few days. So I come home, we get in my father's plane to fly to Guadalajara, and on the way there, the plane crashed, and my mother, my father, and my little sister all died in the crash, and I survived, and barely. I fractured my skull, my back in 3 places, crushed my arm, my leg. I mean, I just broke all my ribs, my arm. I mean, I was just broken from head to toe. I was paralyzed from the waist down, but I was awake. I woke up and I'm in this wreckage, and my mother, my father, my little sister are all within sight. I can see them all, but I can't get to any of them. I can't do anything about what's happening. And I laid there and I watched them all bleed to death in front of me. And it was like something inside me broke. And I renounced God. And I swore I'd never love another human being again as long as I lived. It was not worth it. The pain that I feel right now, this isn't my birthday. My birthday this is the day I'm supposed to get my family back. I'm going to be a part of a family, finally. And God said no. That's what that day was for me. My birthday, my 22nd birthday. And so, a lot of bad stuff happened in Mexico. The federales showed up and interrogated me because they had issues with me being, I had some issues with the Mexican government, but we don't need to get into that. I mean, it just another side story for another day. But I finally got some guys to fly a plane in. They plastered me from my neck to my hips and smuggled me out of Mexico. And I spent a long time in a hospital in Santa Monica, California. Came out of there, used for 6 more years nonstop. And the violence was nuts. And I came out of my last blackout just to short track it. I mean, it's just this. Everybody's got the same stuff, the craziness, the out of control life, the violence, the mayhem, the dishonesty, the inability to connect to other human beings. Just I was alone and scrapping my way through, the hostile territory of life, as I saw it, and I came out of my last blackout, and something had happened in that blackout and I don't know what it was, but when I came out of it, both my hands were broken. My family was dead, watched them all die, had no friends, had no place to live. I'd broken 74 bones. I had over 650 stitches in me. I'd been stabbed twice, shot at the mind. I mean, it had been nuts. But like so many others, there's nothing special about my story, really. When you think about, the road of alcoholism, as it moved towards inevitable either recovery or demise, right, was a heartbreaking road, as it is for, I think, all of us, and as it was for me. And I came out of this last blackout, and I tapped out. I said, please help me. I was dying of alcoholism, and I couldn't go another day. And they were outside. There was a cop car and an ambulance outside. And they were trying to decide, do we take him in for attempted murder? This guy, David Luboff, right? That's why my hands were broken. Or do we take him to the hospital? Because he's dying, and we can tell. And I said, please help me. And there was somebody in the room who knew what had happened. And they went, throw him in that ambulance and get him out of here before the cops know what's going on, right? So they threw me in that ambulance. They took me on, and I spent 42 days in detox. I think it was, 42, 47, something like that. A ridiculously long amount of time on a cot in Long Beach General Hospital. And the kicking was called riding the cot. You got in that old Army cot, you kicked. There's no meds. There's nothing to help you sleep. Nobody came by and said, are you a little anxious, Earl? Can we get you a little something? It's like, hell yeah, I'm anxious. I've been anxious since I was 4. Where you guys been? And they finally, Ray W., may he rest in peace, said to me, Earl, we love you, but you got to go. And if you don't go to AA, you're going to die. And I remember thinking, well, that's kind of extreme, but I mean, and in the face of my life, you know what I mean? That was not an extreme statement, but I just thought, well, it's kind of rude, but all right. And I ended up in the basement of a church on a Friday night, and the guy got up and shared his experience, strength, and hope, and I just went, oh my God, that's me. That was me. I drank like that guy. Something happened to me, just like something happened to that guy. Then he talked about what his life was like now, and I had none of that. But 2 out of 3 was better than I'd done in a long time. And so I thought, they said, keep coming back. And I said, well, you opened the door. Letting me back in was a risky proposition, but you had said, come back. And I said, okay. And I did. And I haven't left. How's that? Under 10. I got sober in under 10. I just want credit for that. I want to make a note right there.
Well, okay, so I want to backtrack a little bit though, because I know that plane crash is a dramatic point in your life. So here's my question. I know you've told that many times, right? With all the speaking that you've done. Does it?
I asked my sponsor if I could leave that out of my story, because I figured if I did, they'd ask me to speak less. I could leave the plane crash out. I said, "Look, it doesn't really have anything to do with alcoholism. I can leave it out." And he just said, "Just shut up," and he hung up on me. That was the end of that conversation.
So it was you 4 in the plane, your mom, your dad.
There was one other person in the plane, who shall remain nameless. A little while later, he said something to me about my little sister. And I have not spoken to him since.
Okay.
It was an incredibly selfish, insensitive remark.
Okay.
And I did not take that well.
Right. Okay, so who was flying the plane?
My father.
Was he, I'm assuming he was a licensed pilot?
No, we stole
Okay, I'm sorry.
Mexico. Yes, it was his plane. He was a licensed pilot. It was a twin engine plane. My mother was actually a licensed pilot as well. She was a co-pilot. I often flew the plane. As a little kid, I could take off a plane, fly it in, and land it. He taught me how to fly when I was a little kid, so I knew how to fly. So there was no shortage of pilots. It was just a lot of circumstances that lead to a whole other story that we don't need to get into. But
I understand. What caused the plane to go down?
That's one of the things that we don't really need to get into.
I understand.
The effect
I understand.
Was my family was gone.
Right. And so that's really what I kind of wanted to ask you about. I know you've told it many times.
Yeah.
How long are you? Where are you in your journey with losing your family?
Well, that's a good question. It's some scars never heal. I mean, people I think a lot of times think, give it time, it'll all heal and be fine. And that's actually not real life. Some things, it's going to be yours to carry. And and the question is, how are you going to carry your weight? How are you going to carry your history? Your experience. And I'll just tell you a quick story about that is specific to my family. And I'm fine, by the way, now. I mean, I don't have, I have a nightmare or a PTSD moment very rarely now, because I've done the work. I went and got the outside help that I needed and did the work necessary to find my way through that maze, of emotion and people think that they're dead. How do you resolve relationships with dead people? And the fact is, I was there for the entire relationship. I know everything that went down. Yes, I have resolved all those relationships. Two of them were very easy to resolve. One took 20 years, right? My father, that took 20 years. But yeah, we're okay, but I know him for who he was, and I accept him for who he was. Right? I don't make excuses for him, but I accept. And I forgive him, because when you forgive someone, you free them from the prison of your own mind. So, I've come to understand what forgiveness really is. Again, because of the path that we walk together here, that's where I've learned everything that's been of use or value to me. But this, I went off on a tangent. I was going to tell you a story that explained where I'm at with my family. Oh, it was, I was reading through the big book, and it came to the promises. And the promises, one of the promises that's suggested in the main text of recovery, says, will not regret the past or wish to shut the door upon it. And I said, the hell you say? I said, I've had experiences. There's no way you're ever going to convince me that any good is ever going to come of that. So why don't we just right now just draw a line right through that one, and I'll take the deal. It's still the best deal anybody's offered me, right? But when we get to that, it's going to piss me off. So let's just get that out of the way. And my sponsor, of course, said, we want to thank you for sharing, Earl. And I think we'll just leave that right where it is. I was like, see, there's no point in talking to you people. You just don't listen to a thing I say. And so we're going along, and every day when I would drive home from work, I'd drive by this church. And this church was the place where my family's funeral had taken place. And I couldn't go in there. It's the only place on earth I could not go. And one day I was driving by it, and I thought, you know what? I can't have that. I can't have that. I can't have a place that I'm so afraid of I can't walk through its doors. I won't live like that, right? I'm going in. Typical defiant Earl, right? So I pull in and I walk in, and my heart rate, and I'm probably beating, 190 over 100, the fear is upon me. The PTSD is just pounding, right? And I went in, and it was a Monday night, and I knew they had an AA meeting in there. And I walked into the meeting. That's why I went up at that time, because I knew there would be a meeting in that church, right? So I walked into the meeting, and I knew the guy leading the meeting. And I gave him the head nod, and he gave me the head nod, and somebody was sharing. I went and I just sat down. I just thought, I'll just be here for this meeting, and I walk out. I win, right? So I'm sitting there, and this the guy leading the meeting goes, Earl, you want to share? He calls me out, right? I didn't raise my hand. Why are you picking on me? Right? I'm over here fighting for my life, what I mean? Which he doesn't know, right? But when he said, Earl, do you want to share? This woman across the room makes this noise, kind of like a scream, and she stands up and she says, are you Earl H? And I said, yeah. And she burst into tears and ran across the meeting and sat down next to me, like on me, and hugged me and was just weeping. And I just kind of held her, and I was just looking at the meeting, just like going, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. Right. And one of the things that I love about the fellowship is. None of the bleeding deacons went, "What the hell's going on here? This is a participation meeting. Get back in your seat, young lady, and we have a format." Blah blah blah. They didn't do that. They just all went, well, I guess we're going this way now, right? They just took it right in stride, right? And she kind of composed herself, and she said, "I was in a plane crash, and I got hurt real bad, and I lost people that I loved." And she said, "And people told me, you got to talk to Earl, because she'd been going in and out. And the reason they wanted her to talk to me is because of the shared experience. That I understood how she felt having had the same experience. And it's hard to find somebody who survived the plane crash. We're around, but we're pretty rare, And she looked at me and she said, "Can I make it?" And I looked her right in the eyes and I said, "Yes, you can." And I'm living proof of it. And that's when I knew that promise that I didn't want in that book was real. That I wouldn't, that the past had suddenly had tremendous value that I couldn't see at the time, but there it was. Back when I first read it, I couldn't see that could ever be true of what had happened in my life. And then that girl stepped into my life and proved to me that it would. And it did. And she believed me. And I remember thinking, wow, that it actually had value for someone, that I went through that. And so I guess that's my answer to how I feel about how I've resolved the loss of my family, that it's just is my path. It's, I've tried to stop thinking about things as good or bad, right or wrong, and start to think of things as beneficial to self and others or harmful to self and others, and where do I want to stand? What do I want my actions to represent? And I learned that here by listening to those who've gone before me, who showed me what was possible.
So, Earl, I so much appreciate what you've shared so far. Would you come back with me at some other point, please, and kind of go into the second half of your story? In fact, this was really what I was hoping we could do, is kind of get to the first part of your story, kind of coming up into AA, and I'd love to have you back and come talk about the second half of your journey, if you will, as you've gotten into Alcoholics Anonymous. Okay.
It would be my honor. It's nice hanging with you.
It's nice hanging with you. God bless you. And we'll get you some time scheduled back soon. Okay.
All right. I'll be hearing from you, John.
Oh, I forgot. I always ended up with page 164 from the Big Book. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. And you will surely meet some of us, like me and Earl H, as you trudge the road of happy destiny.
And you should know that if you look in a dictionary from 1939, trudge means to walk with purpose.
Ah. And then it says, may God bless you and keep you until then.
Yeah.
I'll look forward to having you back on again, Earl. You take care.
We'll see you soon.
Oh, it is so cool talking to Earl and picking his brain and hearing his story and being able to interact with him. Just a very cool guy. And so anyway, like I said earlier, Before this episode began, we're going to have follow-ups to Earl's, the second part to his story, and then some additional conversations about a variety of topics. But please do, if you enjoyed that, and I'm sure you all did, please pause your device and share that episode with a friend or a family member. That episode may be just what they need today. Now on to a little bit of listener feedback. Michelle writes in, and Michelle says, the subject line is Short Thoughts Podcast. So I put out an episode a couple of weeks ago now where I was sharing just some thoughts that I had, some random thoughts, I think is what I called it. And I was actually feeling very grateful that day, and I wanted to record a really short episode and put it out there on the airwaves. It was kind of a vulnerable moment for me, if you will. I thought several times about putting it out, but I finally did. But anyway, Michelle writes in and she says, regarding the Short Thoughts Podcast, first thing she says is, I should be asleep. This came in. I remember it came in at night right after I had written, excuse me, not written, but I had released the episode. By the way, if you want to get in contact with me and or Earl, or you have any comments about Earl, any of the other speakers, anything like that, please write me at John, John, at soberspeak.com, and we will get you hooked up, or I would love to read the feedback. Anyway, back to Michelle. She says, I should be asleep. I've had something heavy laying on my heart the past few years, and it has the possibility to end this week. With that, I've been praying, trying not to be anxious, but on the edge of tears the last few days. I was almost scared to listen to your podcast because I was worried that something bad had happened. She says, in parentheses, I listen to too many crime podcasts. That's funny, Michelle. She says, but I'm glad I listened to it all the way through. First, because my tears finally came out. Second, because I feel less anxious about my situation. And lastly, because I too have felt what you spoke about. And she doesn't say it here, but she knows it was the gratitude I had just for my life and AA and my family and so many things. But anyway, she says, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for posting it. Signing out quickly, but sometimes slowly. Michelle. Oh, God bless you, Michelle. I'm glad you were able to have a good cry. I had one that night as well. So it looks like we were sharing in that same, well, not the same cry, but, different cries apart from each other. You get the idea. Anyway, Kaylee writes in, and she also said, this was the subject line is loved your random thoughts episode. She says, John, your episode really moved me. I really appreciate you putting that out there. I can definitely, by the way, she puts definitely, I like that because it's kind of a cool way of saying definitely. But anyway, she says, I can relate to it on so many levels. Just that overwhelming feeling of gratitude that comes over me from time to time when I actually step back and realize all that God has done from me. Not from me, for me. Sorry about that, Kaylee. Thank you, Kaylee. I'm glad it meant to you. I guess in the big scheme of things, I'm glad I did release it and not hold it back. And once again, I appreciate you writing in. And yeah, I think we all feel that way sometimes. The only difference with me is I have a microphone and I can walk upstairs to Studio A here and actually record it and put it out there. But everyone's got their same story. And I'm sure when I put out something like that you guys are thinking about your moment and when you have been overwhelmed with gratitude. And I appreciate it. Kelly writes in. Oh, she's also writing in about this. And she says, God's all over you. Glad you chose to share your 7-minute gratitude episode. There are moments when we have all felt the urgency to know we matter. Very well put, Kelly. I am sure your message made it to one or many that needed to hear exactly that. Thanks for all you do. Thank you, Kelly. Oh, and I think this is the last one. And it says, Dave writes in, and it's episode number 233, which is the episode we've been talking about here. And it says, John, I listened to your podcast episode number 233 and it blew me away. I was afraid that you were going to say something unfortunate had happened to a family member or friend. Whew, he says. My tone on the beginning of it, I'm sure was kind of hard to tell where this was going. And so nothing tragic happened. It was just an overwhelming feeling of gratitude. But anyway, he says, I often feel the way you express. Sometimes while others are sharing during a meeting or other times during the day, I get a little misty. Man, do I understand that. Oh gosh, do I understand that, Dave. He says, we're all so fortunate. I wouldn't have the best thing in life if I didn't experience the worst thing in my life. Very well put. I guess the idea of best and worst are relative. Big smiley face. I don't remember ever asking, why did I become an alcoholic? Rather, I asked, why was I able to get sober when so many others didn't? I can so relate to that, Dave. I can so relate to it. The folks that do stick with us get sober and find comfort in sobriety are walking miracles. And I really love to see God at work in their lives. I too feel like a blessed man. He said, I listened to your podcast on a podcast addict player and the podcast following episode 233 from Sober Speak, and my cue was, and if you guys want to go look this up, you can. I listened to it. It was a very good episode. And the name of the episode, the name of the podcast is From the Friars, Friars, God and Us. And then Dave says, to me, this just perfectly reinforced what you express. Father Jeremiah Merriam talks about the parable of the prodigal son and how it reveals to us the truth about God and us. So, of course, I cried a little. I listened to that too, and I think it was a very good episode. Once again, it's From the Friars, excuse me, and the name of the episode is God and Us. He says, I've been praying. I've been enjoying your podcast for a few years. I'm amazed at your interviews, insights, and quality speakers. You continue to develop and refine your skills. I guess, Dave, I'm not sure about that, but thank you. He says, I'm glad you listened when called to serve. I'm sure you get more out of this than we do. Keep it up, brother. Love, Dave. Well, love back at you, Mr. Dave. And for right now, I'm keeping it up. Like I always say, I'm taking this a week at a time, but love back at you, brother. I appreciate you writing in, Dave. My friend Jim writes in, and Jim says, John, my brother and friend. Jim has been a listener of this podcast from just about the very beginning, and it's been so cool to watch him from afar go through his journey, the ups and downs he's had. And Jim, I consider you a brother and a friend as well. And he says, thank you for the double blessing this week. What do you mean? He says, Jimmy D and the Tradition 2 episode, plus your random thoughts. I love hearing your passion and vulnerability about this wonderful gift, Gus. And then in parentheses, Gus is the great universal spirit, comma, my higher power. Gus, the great universal spirit. I don't think I've ever heard that one, Jim. I like that. Anyway, he says about this wonderful gift that Gus provides me and so many others through you. Keep doing what you're doing, John. I don't write every week because I know you're busy, but believe me, I pray a prayer of thanks for you many times every week. Oh, and a big praying hands. And he says, blessings to you, Shannon, your kids, and even your lizards. He's heard me talk about the lizards that we have in the house. And he's got this big emoji of I think that's a gecko or whatever, and then big smiley faces and hearts and all that stuff. And he says, you touch my heart with every new Sober Speak podcast. Oh, that's very nice. Thank you so much, Jim, for writing in. Ryan DMs on the Insta, and he says, John, I'm really into your show. I've been listening for 2 days and it's really engaging. Mainly been into the David G shows today. You know, I was just talking to David G this week about getting him back here on another episode. We just have to match up our schedules. And anyway, I'm going to get David G back on again soon. And he said, I went to my first meeting by free will this last month. By free will. I guess that maybe he's been forced in at other times. But this last Monday and couldn't make Tuesday, but went today. I've met many bottoms, but still continue to drink. I've yet to change. I've yet to have the courage to speak or to get a desired chip. I know I need to quit. I'm very self-aware. But at the end of the day, I feel so bad that the only thing that brings me back to normal, it's a couple of shots and a beer. Oh, I think there's thousands and thousands of people listening to this right now that can relate to that, Ryan. He says, my drinking has slowed down, but I know I need to quit for good. I feel so guilty for going to meetings and then drinking after. I don't claim to be sober, but getting sober is on my mind every minute I'm awake. I can't go to treatment, so I have to figure out a way to stop. Y'all say, let go and give it to a higher power. I don't know how to do that. I don't know if you have some advice for a person in my predicament. Tomorrow's a new day. I failed tonight. Thank you for the show. It's helping me. Well, Mr. Ryan, as you know, I went ahead and got you in touch with David. I've hoped that you all have had some follow-up conversations. The first thing is admitting you're powerless and being honest and being vulnerable, and you have started. Anyway, you keep me posted with your journey there, my friend. Megan posted in the super secret Facebook group. By the way, if you are not in the super secret Facebook group and you would like to be there, please, please, please go to your Facebook application and search for the Sober Speak secret group and ask for admission into the group, and we will get you on in there. But anyway, Megan posted in there. She said, by the way, there are like so many celebrations and so many people in there that are posting like daily meditation kind of things. I call them, right? They're all over the place. And then people posting where various Zoom meetings are and various meetings are and the whole 9 yards. So I think we have close to 20. It's over 2,000 people in there right now. So come on in and join the gang. We'd love to have you there. Back to Megan, posting in the super secret Facebook group. She says, 500 days sober now, and I owe it to my higher power, my program, this Facebook group, and John M. and the Sober Speak podcast. If I hadn't stumbled upon this podcast nearly 17 months ago, it would have made my commute to and from work that much longer. I'm so grateful for recovery and for knowing that other alcoholics are here and hearing their experience, strength, and hope. I hope my story can be a blessing to someone someday. the ways so many of yours continue to help me. Be kind and love always. Heart, peace sign, Megan. Well, Megan, I think your experience just became a blessing to others. So thank you for sharing, and I'm so glad that you are 500 days sober. God bless you. Last but not least, Mr. Cam writes in. Cam, C-A-M. He says, "Hi, John M. I subscribed to your podcast by chance last month when I was looking into podcasting for a side project. I remember how much I enjoyed listening to speaker meetings on YouTube when I returned to AA after a very long hiatus. I live in Japan, so the speaker meetings helped me connect when I couldn't go to a meeting. Luckily, I was able to find a small group in my city that meets weekly. Now we meet with Zoom. I attend meetings on a regular basis, but listen to podcasts for the speakers. I first entered the rooms of AA in the early 1990s in Atlanta at the famous or infamous, he says, Triangle Club. I realized that I had the makeup of an alcoholic the day I was born. My father was a bartender and a drunk, and my mother was sadly also a drunk. Life was really hard for me and my sisters, but eventually we made it into adulthood. I promised I would never smoke or drink like my parents, but once I got on my own, things changed. I was certainly a drunk. I ended up in an AA meeting for myself in 1993. Unfortunately, I didn't want to accept that I was a drunk, so I tried to control my drinking. I was too young, but did get a year of sobriety from 1997 to 1998. It was a year I'll never forget. I finally worked the steps. I had spiritual experiences in steps 5 and 11. Unfortunately, I needed to add to the wreckage of my past and decided I was not like all of the sober drunks. You know, they were crazy. So I had that first drink, which turned into nearly 2 decades of wreckage. This is a common story, unfortunately. He says, I put my will before God's will. Everything ended in failure, car accidents, run-ins with the law, moving from one job to the next, one toxic relationship to the next, one town to the next. There's too much to tell. I ended up in LA, Los Angeles, and then Japan. Finally, on October 27th, 2014, I was finally sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I seriously, for the last time being sick and tired, I'm sorry, that was my fault. I stopped drinking. It has been 2,712 days and counting in my new life. Good for you, Cam. I am a member of AA now in a group in central Japan, and I'm working the steps of AA with my sponsor and doing the things that I need to do on a daily basis to ensure my reprieve. That's interesting. I got back from a meeting a couple hours ago where that was the subject. Anyway, he says, I have 2 children and a wife who has stood by me. I worked the program, but unfortunately, I still haven't had any sponsees since I got sober again, and I'm not sure why. Our group is small, and it's made up of old-timers who go back out and never return. I guess it's hard to stay sober in Japan, but I'm doing it! Exclamation point. I suppose I need to focus on step 12, so I decided to rework all my steps again, and I'm back on step 4, but it's one day at a time, my friend, and one day I hope to be of service just like you. Well, you're being of service right now, Cam. He said, I can't begin to tell you how much I enjoy your show. I've listened so far to about 10 episodes, a couple of new ones, and I've started back in the beginning and have finished 1 through 7. I have loved all of them so far, but KDP Part 2, one of your recent ones, really resonates with me, but they are all great. I'm going to keep listening, so I hope you keep producing, John M. Well, I'll try my best, Mr. Cam. God bless you, and thank you for your service. This recovering drunk, thousands of miles away, is grateful. Best Cam V. Well, Cam V in Japan. Thank you so much for laying it all out there. I sure appreciate you. Oh, man, what a good guy. What a good... You have really gotten around L.A., Atlanta, Japan, who knows wherever else you have been. Sounds like you've been a traveling man. But I'm glad you have what was that, 2,712 days as of the writing. Let's hope that it's more by now, right? Next time you're writing me, you're going to be 3,000 or more, or something like that. I don't know what I'm talking about. All right, everybody. God bless you. Keep coming back. It works if you work it. May God bless you and keep you until then. I take this 1 week at a time. Hopefully we'll be back next week. Y'all take care.